Good day everyone, we are Group 5 from BSI 4C and we are here to present the chapters 9 and 10 of Donald Waters' book entitled Logistics, an Introduction to Supply Chain Management. Please enjoy watching the video.
As the previous group discussed, the chapter of book of Donald Waters entitled Logistics, an Introduction to Supply Chain Management, we have learned the context of logistics, integrating the supply chain, logistics strategy, implementing the strategy, locating facilities, planning resources, controlling material flow, measuring, and improving performance. We now move on to the procurement and inventory management. First, we will define the difference between purchase and procurement. These are the mechanisms that can initiate the flow of materials. In a supply chain, an organization buys materials from suppliers, add value to them and sell it to customers. As each organization buys and sells, the materials move through the whole supply chain. This action would initiate the action of purchase. So, what is the difference between purchase and procurement? Purchasing gives a mechanism for initiating and controlling the flow of materials through a supply chain. On the other hand, procurement is responsible for acquiring all the materials needed by an organization.
Purchase or purchasing refers to the actual buying, while the procurement has a broader meaning that includes acquisition, selecting the suppliers, materials handling, etc. In this topic, we will focus on procurement. The importance of procurement is the procurement forms an essential link between organization in the supply chain, and it gives a mechanism for coordinating the flow of materials between customers and suppliers. It serves as an essential part of organization because every organization needs a supply of materials. Procurement is responsible for organizing this if the procurement is carried out badly. It will also reflect on the acquisition of materials such poor quality, wrong quantity, and so on.
In recent years, procurement was seen as a clerical job, buying material as they were requested. But now, it is recognized as an important management function in its own right. Some factors that affect supply chain help procurement to be considered as a senior management role. Next, we introduce the aims of procurement such as organizing a reliable and uninterrupted flow of materials into an organization, working closely with user departments, finding good suppliers, buying the right materials, negotiating good price and conditions, keeping stocks low, moving materials quickly through supply chain, expediting deliveries when necessary, keeping abreast of condition including pending price increases, scarcities, new products, and so on. Overall, the main aim of procurement is to have a reliable supply of materials that guarantees the organization.
Next, we have the organization of procurement, or what it takes to organize a procurement. It usually depends on the size and type of organization. For example, in a small organization, a single buyer is responsible for all the purchases, policy, and administration. A medium-sized organization may have departments on organizing this, such as buyers, expeditors, storekeepers, and clerks, while a large organization have 100 or more people to keep the procurement process running, as these large-sized organizations buys or purchases materials in large amounts. Also, the organization of procurement is organized in a single department in order to have centralized purchasing. The benefits of this includes consolidation of all orders for the same and similar materials to get quantity discounts, coordinating associated activities to reduce cost of transport, eliminating duplicated effort and haphazard practices, having a single point of contact for suppliers, developing specialized skills and improving procurement operations, allowing other people to concentrate on their own work without diversifying into purchasing, and lastly, concentrating responsibility for procurement, making management control easier. Now, let's talk about the number of suppliers that the organization gets. An organization can get a single sourcing or multi-sourcing. An organization would have advantages such as stronger relationship between customers and suppliers, commitment of all parties to the success of the relationship, economies of scale and price discounts with larger orders, easier communication and reduced administration, less variation in materials and their supply, easier to keep requirements, conditions when they use single source. Meanwhile, an organization would have advantages such as competition between suppliers reduces price. There is a less chance of disrupted supplies as problems can be avoided by switching suppliers. Can deal more easily with varying demands. Involving more organization can give access to wider knowledge and information. And lastly, does not rely on trusting one external organization. I'll add something to that. Organization also use forward buying. This is when an organization orders more materials than it currently needs and keeps excess in the stocks. Oftentimes, the supplier wants to satisfy the organization that it serves. Also, the organization monitors its supplier or suppliers in order to see it provides satisfactory service. This term is called seller's rating or vendor's rating. Often, this is done informally by a subjective review. Sometimes, there are complex measures for every aspect of performance. Once it has chosen a supplier, an organization has to follow some procedures for arranging purchases. This procedure is called the procurement cycle. A typical procurement cycle consists of first, a user department, second, the procurement. Next is a procurement to each supplier, supplier to procurement, procurement to chosen supplier to procurement, procurement to user department to procurement, and lastly, user department to procurement. There are two types of procurement processes, traditional and e-procurement. In the traditional or paper-based system procurement may take days. Meanwhile, most organizations use e-procurement because of its efficiency and fast-pacing plan. Also, there are two types of e-procurement, B2B, where one business buys materials from another business, and when a final customer buys from a business. In terms of purchasing, there are different ways of approaches for purchasing different products. It also depends on the importance of materials on how organizations approach procurement efforts. The importance of materials include the non-critical, bottleneck, and strategic materials. Non-critical materials have low profits and little risk in supply and need basic, simple procedures for purchasing. Bottleneck materials having low profits but have more risk in supply and need long-term contracts with alternative sources to avoid potential problems. Strategic materials with higher profits need more formal relationship with suppliers over the long term, possibly developing into alliances and partnerships.
In addition to that, there are many factors to consider in choosing the right supplier for the needs or the material in the organization. The Department of Trade and Industry suggests that the three main criteria for such decisions are financial factor for relating to the cost, operation factor for the relating to responsiveness, flexibility, reliability, and so on, strategic factor for relating to long-term implication of the decision for the organization. Although we have talked in general terms about placing an order, there are several different types of order. Organizations typically talk about placing an order for goods but signing a contract for services and leasing equipment. In other words, in phrase, is what we usually see as the term and conditions. We have already mentioned some specific types of orders, with the following being most common. Purchase orders are used in the standard approach to procurement that we described above. It is essentially a letter from one organization to another. giving details of the materials it wants to purchase in its condition of purchase. This is usually a response to a quotation from qualified supplier, given the materials it can supply and its condition of trade. Blanket orders give a simple system for cheap, standard items such as stationery. An organization places a single order for all materials that it will need over some period, such as a year. Then the supplier delivers batches of materials when suggested during the year. E-procurement uses EDI or the internet to supply purchases by replacing paper-based procedures with electronic ones. This gives a fast and efficient method for repeat or straightforward orders. Contracts give detailed description of an agreement between an organization and supplier. They describe exactly the responsibilities, work, and service for each, together with all relevant terms and conditions. Many organizations use contracts instead of purchase order for extended services, so design a contract for a supply of electricity. In the same way, organizations sign a contract for a specific piece of work, such as a construction company building a length of road. Subcontracts. It is when a supplier signs a contract with organization. It may not do all the work itself but prefers to pass some work to a subcontractor. Then there are two agreements, the contract between the organization and the supplier. The subcontract between the supplier and subcontractor for big projects. They can be several more layers of subcontracting. Leases and rental agreements, again present in term and condition of acquiring materials. They are generally used for buildings and equipment and it returned to the owner after some period of use. For example, you can rent a car and when you can finish with it, you return it to the owner.
Pricing is a very complicated issue. It is certainly not in an organization's long-term interest to force suppliers to give unrealistically low prices, or they will go out of business and not be there to the next time they are needed. In general, there are 4 ways of setting a price for materials. First, price list. It is where suppliers quote fixed prices. Book publishers, for example, quote a selling price that they expect retailers to use. They can give a discount for large or special purchases, but one organization essentially fixes the price. Next, we have the special quotation, where suppliers quote prices to each customer, particularly for non-standard materials. Customers submit a request for a quotation, and the suppliers return a price and condition that is willing to offer. Third is the negotiation, which is when there is some flexibility in the price and conditions. A supplier might give a quote, is willing to negotiate if it can get some benefits such as repeat orders. Similarly, customers can negotiate if they want special conditions such as fast delivery. Lastly, commodity pricing is the commodities such as oil, coffee, gold, and wheat. Market forces set the going rate that is used by all suppliers. You can see many such figures in, say, financial future markets. Even when the basic price has been agreed, there can be other difficulties with conditions. Several standard conditions are used, and for historical reasons, they seem to be praised in terms of shipping. These include the X-Works, free alongside FAS, free on board FOB, delivered X-Ship, cost and freight, CNF, cost insurance and freight, CIF, and delivered.
Now that we've tackled the concept of procurement, we will now explain and further elaborate the Chapter 10 of Donald Waters' book, the Inventory Management. The aim of this chapter is to understand why organizations hold stocks, analyze the cost of holding stock, and calculate economic order quantities, associated lead times, cost and cycle lengths, and it also aims to define service level and do related calculations for safety stock, describe periodic review systems, calculate target stock levels, and do ABC analysis of each inventories. Now, let's discuss the reasons for holding stocks. In the last chapter, we saw how procurement organizes the flow of materials into an organization. In this chapter, we will discuss when an organization should buy materials or how much it should buy, and relate them to the broader policies on inventory management. Materials move smoothly through a supply chain, but delays occur. When materials stop moving, they form stocks which all organizations hold, from shops to chef and market research companies. So when we say stocks, it is an unutilized organization inputs or outputs which are held in reserve to ensure the organization's resources are available when needed, and an inventory is a list of things held in stock. Now that we've discussed the preliminary information of inventory management, we will now proceed to the importance and elaboration of buffering supply and demand. In this topic, the stock plays a vital role in buffering supply and demand. The main purpose of stocks is to act as a buffer between supply and demand, and they allow operations to continue smoothly and avoid disruptions. They allow operations to continue smoothly and avoid disruptions.
As we are talking about stocks, did you know that we have 3 types of stock? Just about everything is held as stock somewhere. Whether it is raw materials in the factory, finished goods in the shop or tins, or baked beans in the pantry. We can classify these stocks as first, raw materials, part and components that have been delivered to an organization but are not yet being used. Second, work in process materials that have started but not yet finished their journey through the production process. Third, finished goods that have finished the process and are waiting to be shipped out to customers. According to others, the classification of stock is based on raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods in the arbitrary. Nationally, 30% are raw materials, 40% are work in progress, and 30% are finished goods. Some stocks items do not fall easily into these categories, and we can define 2 additional types: spare parts or machinery equipment, and so on. Consumables such as oil, fuel, paper, and etc. On the other hand, there is also cost of carrying a stock. It is stated that total cost of holding stock is typically around 25% of its value a year. Meanwhile, the overall cost can be divided into 4 separate components: the unit cost, reorder cost, holding cost, and short date cost. In addition to that, the most commonly costing is based on the amount paid, and it can use the FIFO, first in, first out, LIFO, or last in, first out, and average cost.
Now let's proceed to economic order quantity. The economic order quantity is a popular control method for independent demand system addressing various inventory problems. It is flexible, easy to use, and provide guidelines for various circumstances. Moving on, when an organization buys materials, there is a lead time between placing the order and having the materials arrive in stock. This is the time taken to prepare an order, send it to the supplier, allow the supplier to make or assemble the materials, and prepare them for shipment. Ship the goods back to the customer and allow the customer to receive and check the materials and put them into stock. Depending on circumstances, this lead time can vary between a few minutes and months or even years. Now let's discuss uncertain demand and safety stock. The basic economic order quantity model assumes constant demand, but it can vary widely and have significant uncertainty. To deal with variable and uncertain demand, organizations can use methods like holding additional stocks to add a margin of safety. This can be done by increasing and holding cost by a small amount to avoid higher shortage costs. The reorder level is raised by the amount of safety stock, affecting the time when an order is placed. This approach is useful when demand is normally distributed but not when the demand is above average. Higher safety stocks obviously give a greater cushion against unexpectedly high demand and have a better customer service. Of course, the cost of holding large stocks are also higher. So we have to balance these 2 effects. The problem is that shortage costs are also difficult to find, that they are little more than guesses. Periodic review systems are suitable for low, irregular demand for expensive items, while periodic review systems order varying amount at regular intervals. These systems are generally low in operating cost and better suited for high, regular demand and low value items.
Last is effort of stock control. Inventory control systems requires effort to operate smoothly, especially for expensive items like aircraft engines. ABC analysis categorizes items into expensive, standard, and cheap categories. Using the Pareto analysis or rule of 80-20, 20% of items require 80% of attention, while the remaining 80% require only 20%. Automated systems handle all expensive items, while managers make decisions for ordinary items. Cheap items are excluded from automatic systems and controlled by ad hoc methods. It shows typical results of plotting the cumulative percentage of annual use against the cumulative percentage of items. You have to be careful with ABC analysis as they can give misleading advice. So the annual value of materials used is often a poor measure of its importance. Essential safety equipment, for example, has to be present even if it is never used. An assembly line only keep going if all materials have the same high service level regardless of their cost. To reduce inventory control efforts, organizations can use third parties or vendor-managed inventory. Vendor-managed inventory allows wholesalers to control stocks and send more when needed, improving efficiency, organization, and customer service. However, drawbacks include reliance on a supplier with different objectives, less clear responsibility for stock, the need for sophisticated information systems, and less flexibility. Thank you for watching our simple video presentation focusing on Donald Waters' book entitled Logistics, An Introduction to Supply Chain Management, Chapters 9 and 10, which focuses on the topics procurement and inventory management. Thank you for watching. Good day!